Hello, everyone. Earlier this week, I sat down and talked with my good friend John Hunter about what are some of the issues he sees with young adults and the church. My name is Tom Schaefer, and these are the Discipleship Journals. Well, hey, man, John, good to see you.
Good to see you
Been a
too.
minute. And if no other way to see you via Zoom, which is what everybody's doing nowadays. So tell me a little bit about what you've been up to.
Well, yeah, my name is John Hunter, and I've been a missionary. I was a missionary for 6 years, working with college students in England. I met my wife there. We moved to Malaysia. We were there as missionaries and helped the church plant for a couple years, and now we're back in the United States. Last 4 years, and I'm actually just finishing up seminary, and I have been working with a local Lutheran church, and since COVID-19, so they didn't have a pastor at the time, and I kind of stepped in to do some preaching that they needed for on Sundays, some supply preaching, so kind of like a substitute teacher. And so I kind of just stepped in for them, and I've been kind of leading the services for them and doing a lot of preaching for them. And they've actually just extended a call to me, so I'm really excited about that. They're going to have their final vote this week, and to see whether that goes through. But I'm really excited for that, and so that's really close to where we live now. And so I don't have to move anywhere for the call, which is really exciting for my family and myself. And so, yeah, I'm just really excited what God's going to do with that, and really excited to potentially to reach lots of new people outside the church for Jesus. And so, yeah, we're really thrilled with the opportunity and excited for what God has for us here in the upcoming years.
Awesome, John. I've known you for probably maybe longer than you know I've known you, because I've known your dad for a long time, and it's one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you is because I know the transformation that God did in your life
Yeah.
was amazing, to see. And while you grew up in the church, God really did a thing in your life. How many years ago has it been now?
Just 11 years ago.
11
11 years ago.
years ago. 11 years ago. And could you say a little bit about that transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in the church, was, fairly involved in youth group. And then when I went off to college, I did not find a home church. And I drifted each year farther away from my relationship with God. And so kind of by the end of my senior year, my life was a mess. I was actually vice president of my fraternity that I had joined there. And I played a lot of football. I played football and was the vice president of my fraternity. So I didn't do a whole lot of studying, but I, a lot of the statistics are like that for kids as they go off to college, but I didn't really eagerly find any relationships. And so a lot of the friendships I made, were people that went to parties. And so I went to parties, and it just became all about parties. But towards the end of my senior year, I'd actually studied criminal justice when I went to college and for my undergraduate. And I got to the end. I did an internship at the end of my 4 years there. Why they have you do an internship at the very end, I have no idea. Why wouldn't they have you do it at the beginning? Because I think that's a great way for you to understand whether you actually want to do this with your life. And I honestly, I've got friends who are police officers and working in the criminal justice system, and they are doing amazing stuff. and they're great people. And I knew it was just not for me. I was like, I don't like this. And I really got discouraged at the end of my senior year. I thought all my friends they've got all their next job. They got their first jobs, and, a lot of them were engineers, and they knew exactly where they were going to go, and they had their whole life plan. I was like, well, I don't have a plan for my life. My plan was go to the bar later that night. And so, and really that's, that was the first time I prayed. I was so discouraged and terrified of the future, because I knew that if I continued down this path, I knew that I was going to probably end up in jail or worse, that you can't just binge drink your life away. And I didn't really want that for my life. You only get to go, one time around in this life. And so I wanted my life to be more than what I was experiencing. And I knew that there just had to be more to life than this. And so, actually, the night that I prayed for God, I prayed to God one night, towards the end, right before my graduation, I just prayed, God, I pray you'd give me an opportunity. And literally the next day I had an email off a pastor from Sheffield, England. And I had met this pastor, several years before. My dad had introduced me to him. His name's Mick Woodhead, and he's a good friend of the family. And I had been over there to visit their church, and they had a discipleship group called Form. And he had asked me, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, or before then, before I was graduating high school, if I'd come and do that. And I was like, no, I'm going to go play football, and I'm going to go drink beer. That's what I had planned, which was a silly plan. But anyways, I really felt like that was my opportunity to get right with God, to explore actually what he had for me in my life. And I took the risk. I thought, you know what, let's do it and take the risk and go. And so I went over there and I did this discipleship year, and it was amazing. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
I think it was more than you even expected. Well, I would say, right?
Oh, if I would have known everything, Tom, I wouldn't have gone. I'd have been too scared. So, it's kind of like baby steps. God didn't show me everything, but he showed me the next step. And
yeah.
And so I trusted him. And what I really found, I couldn't believe it. I went to this church, and there was actually young adults who were excited about following Jesus.
Yeah.
I was like, these aren't like the young adults I know.
Yeah.
And they were just on fire. They were full of the Holy Spirit. They were talking about going out and serving the homeless. There was groups that were going out, and I went with them. I was like, you guys go and do this in your free time? Like, this is not what normal 20-somethings do. So you guys go and actually do this in your free time on a Saturday night. That's mind blowing. And, they would go, and instead of going into the nightclub, which I would usually do, they would stand outside the nightclub. They'd give out water bottles. They'd pray for people as they came out. And I was just like, this is crazy. This is so different, radically different. They would actually have students go into the nightclub, these Christian students, and they would make sure that people didn't pass out in the bathrooms, or that vulnerable girls would make sure that they'd get a taxi on the way home, that they weren't, preyed upon by other guys. That some of the Christian girls who were sober, they would, help them get them a cab and get them home safely and things like that. And I was just blown away by these students. And, it was weird to be in a church where, I kind of grew up in a church where you saw, infants now and then get baptized, but then I was seeing still infants being baptized, but I was also seeing new people being baptized regularly. And it was exciting. It was exciting to be a part of. And there was I could really sense that God was doing something amazing at this church. Something was very different about this church. And God really got a hold of my life there and did a lot of transformational work. And I actually got involved a lot with the student work there. And I really I felt a real strong connection to the university students. I was kind of sent to reach a lot of those people. And in being foreign, I instantly, people were like, what is an American doing over here? And like, Sheffield is not like London where you'd see Americans around. Like Sheffield is in a, middle, upper middle England. And it's, it's not touristy at all. And so, that it gave me a way in to be able to talk to a lot of these guys, and being a sports background guy and having a story, to share with them about how God changed my life. I was able to, reach a lot of these guys, and God did some amazing work. We got to see lots of these guys get saved and baptized and really grow in their discipleship, and now are leaders in the church. One of the guys that we reached out to, he was typical like me in college, and now he's in leadership at that church. He's actually part of the operations team, and has helped running the church, which is like, for me, it was like mind blowing to where he was. We had first met, but my story really wasn't much different from his. And so God works in amazing ways. And that's what really propelled me into church leadership. And I knew that I wanted to serve God because I knew that was the most exciting way that I could live my life. I thought, that this is exciting. This is transformational. This is making real change in people's life. And I knew that was the biggest adventure that I could imagine doing with my life, is seeing real change in people, going from a destructive life to finding real life and being saved by Jesus. It's absolutely the only way that I wanted to spend my life after that.
Yeah. And here's what I find amazing. I mean, clearly God did a miracle in your life with that. And, you talked about the beginning of your story, how it's not that different than most. You went to college, you left the church, but where your story does differ significantly now is that what we're finding, it used to be that when, that was a pattern. People would, they'd reach their young adulthood and they would leave the church for a while, but they'd come back. But that's not the case anymore. That's not the norm anymore, at least, right? And what we're finding is that these young adults are leaving and not coming back. And so, that's where I think your story is a wonderful story to hear, and also gives you a very important insight. And so now you're at a place where you're going to be becoming a pastor of a church that's, the kind of like a typical mainline church. It's a Lutheran church. It's aging, but you get to bring this perspective, and it's part of what I wanted you to share. Is what can you share with me, with those that would be listening? What do churches need to know? What can they do to begin to reach the younger generations again, as we see that them leaving more and more from the church?
Absolutely. And I think the first thing is to dismiss the lie that you can't reach these people, or think that you don't have something to offer. Every single person in the church has something to offer and can play an important part. So many young people would want a mentor. I never had anybody in the church come up to me when I was young and say, I'd really like to invest in your life. I'd like to, disciple, mentor. You're important to me, and I want to invest in your life. And don't think that you don't have something important to say to them, or that they're not interested in what you have to say, or in that relationship. I think that that's really key. A lot of young people are extremely lonely. It's a huge challenge for young adults, but it's a great opportunity in terms of how can we meet that loneliness? I mean, we're more connected than ever before. We've got access to smartphones and apps and all sorts of social media, and social media that I don't even understand anymore, because now I'm just outside the young age. I even turn to my wife now, and I hate saying it like as a dad, because I still want to be the young guy. But the thing is, like, the real relationship will never, these social media platforms will never replace the value of real relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I would look for, how do you build those relationships in your community? How can you meet those needs? How can you, whether it's investing in young families, and maybe it's to start off with, maybe you don't have any young people, but maybe it's serving the children, starting something, for children and reaching parents, or investing into marriages. That's always a great way in. And I think the way to communicate with a lot of these older, they are older churches.
Mm-hmm.
The average age of the church that I'm currently working with is 70 years old. And that's not untypical. A lot of churches are aging. And I think a great way to talk about it is legacy. That's the vision, is that, every parent and every grandparent wants to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
And really, for me, legacy is multiplication. It's, and that's discipleship, is that you want to leave the next generation better off than what you have. The way it's that it's going to be for a lot of churches. It's going to be sacrificial. It's going to be hard work, and it's going to take everybody's involvement. It's not going to be just the pastor, but we talk about the priesthood of all believers. We're going to need the whole church to get involved and to serve and to really to experiment.
So there's a Christian song out that I hear on the radio once in a while, and it says, "I don't want to leave a legacy." It's one of the lines of it, and I get the whole idea. I mean, of what he's talking about. And what he's talking about, it's not about me; it's about Jesus. I get that, but having the mindset of leaving a kingdom legacy,
yes,
is, I think, really, really important. Share with me, if you would, a couple of the top things that a church could do, should do, and shouldn't do in trying to reach a younger generation.
So I'll start with the shouldn't do. The first thing that I wouldn't do is play it safe. You're going to have to take risks. You're going to have to experiment, and you're going to have to adapt.
Oh, that's a biggie, man.
So the worst thing that your church could do is absolutely stay the same. You're going to have to try things, and even if you fail, take the failing as an opportunity to learn and really to go through and discuss, okay, what worked, what didn't work, how could we adapt, and let's try something new. Pilot things. If something doesn't work, big deal. Like, just find a way. The only thing that you shouldn't do is not take a risk. Is just play it safe, because you'll continue to continue to decline, and that will be it. You'll close up shop, and that will be it in 20, 30 years, however long you can maintain the status quo. That is what you shouldn't do. What you could do is you have to think about maybe thinking about outside of the box, even the church box. So, look at being multi-site. For instance, the church that I'm working with right now, the building is like 100 years old, and it's just not built the same way as buildings are built today. And so, one thing that we're considering as a church, and one thing that actually Church Doctor Ministries, who gave the consultation to this church prior to calling me, is that they said, why don't you think about doing a modern worship service off campus? So we're going to look at cafes. We're going to look at maybe the movie theater or another venue in town, somewhere that's more modernized, something that doesn't have a lot of overhead above it, but somewhere where people already are meeting. And so that's one experiment that we're going to try. Another thing is to, what you could do is get people deployed in some kind of small group outreach, whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it a missional community or a fresh expression, get people to meet midweek outside of the building with intentional mission. That get out there and meet people and gather people and point them to Jesus, serve them, find the needs of the community, I think, be a missionary. Think about it as being a missionary to your own context.
Yeah.
And so that takes a lot of primary research. If you were dropped in Central Africa, you would want to learn about the context. You never want to assume about your own context. I think that's often, can trip you up, is that, you don't want to just assume, but you really want to do a primary. What are the needs of the community? Ask police officers, ask teachers, what's a way that I can serve my community? It's often when we meet the needs of the community that we can build a bridge with those people. And then you have other opportunities to invite them to something like an Alpha course, which is a basic introduction of the Christian faith. You can invite them to church. You can invite them to your small group. You can invite them in your home for a meal. That's an absolute should. I believe that, I'm a big believer that hospitality is a gift that every Christian should have. I would strongly encourage you guys who are listening to really think through who are your social contacts that don't have a connection with the church, and invite them into your home, have a meal with them, and pray for an opportunity to share your faith with them.
Yeah, right where you started out was so huge, and the whole issue of risk. What you can't do is just keep doing things the same. There was a group of churches I was consulting with once, and I was sharing with them some of the ideas that you're talking about, getting outside the walls and so forth. And one of the people there responded, look, this is more than we can think about. We're just trying to survive, is what he said. And you know what, I'll abbreviate, but in that moment, what I said to him was, I said, the moment you focus on surviving, you're already on your way to dying.
Yep.
And I mean, that's a Jesus thing, right? He who tries to save his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake in the gospel will find it.
Absolutely.
And you have to be willing to risk. That is, I think, such an important thing that you shared with us. John, thank you. Look, I pray God's blessing on your ministry as you move forward. May God just richly use you to do His kingdom work, and may you help the people of your church to find their kingdom legacy. So thank you, man, for sharing, and hope to talk to you again soon. Find out what else is going on in your life.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Hey, I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope you found that conversation inspirational, that it perhaps opened your thoughts to some ideas about what you and your church can do to reach future generations for Jesus Christ. Thanks again for joining us. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you've already done that, hit the notification bell so you'll know when the next videos are coming up. Have a great week. Take care. Be safe.